Hi, this is Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limmer Chiropractic Center, and this is your Ask the Doctor workshop. You know what? I love the fact that we get to do this. We've done these in the past. Our patients come up with the most incredible questions, things that are of interest to them, things that they don't know, things that possibly they have never had addressed in any other doctor's office. And a lot of these questions are things that are concerns of theirs that they're asking not for themselves but also for others. So tonight we're going to cover a couple of these questions. In fact, our patients have been so gracious to give us numerous questions that we're going to be repeating this workshop in 2 months and answering more of these questions. So I'm going to be asking you, before you leave tonight, make sure that you're leaving your comment section or comment or question in the comment section, if you would please. So very first is by Sherry. Sherry asked us the question, why is my weight balance off? Now, for those of you who don't know, maybe are new to chiropractic, weight balance is one of those very simple checks that we utilize in order to help us better understand how the weight of the body is distributed from the right to the left. It's called bilateral weight scales. Now, just like when we put a shirt on a hanger, we want everything to hang evenly off of both sides. When it does, that's great. The hanger is going to sit there nice and perfect in your closet. Now, let's imagine, though, if the shirt was just shifted more to one side than the other. Well, we all know, obviously, what's going to happen. Well, all of a sudden, the hanger is going to tilt to the side. Well, things are not going to settle properly, and, well, there's going to be more weight distributed to one side than the other. So in the human body, it's exactly the same. Our spine is designed to be in a nice straight line. When it is, that's fantastic. That means that the openings on the right side and the left side of the spine, they're going to be nice and wide. It's going to allow for proper communication of the nerves going out on both sides, which means our body is not only going to be wired correctly, it's going to be firing the way it's supposed to and communicating the information into the tissues the way it's supposed to. Now, your posture is that window into your spine. It's an outward sign of what's going on inwardly. That sick posture demonstrates a sick spine within. When we have what's called a subluxation, the bone comes out of place and it puts pressure on the nerve. The bone comes out of place and it drives our posture off to one side. Well, as it drives our posture off to one side, that weight distribution is not even anymore. In fact, what ends up happening is the weight on one side oftentimes is incredibly larger than the other side. And there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of things that drive this equation, but we recognize that with every step that we take, as we have extra weight, extra pressure going through one side as opposed to the other, what ends up happening? Well, we wear the body down more quickly on one side than it was supposed to. And in fact, Wolff's Law kicks in. And we'll talk about Wolff's Law a little bit later. But here's the thing. Our weight balance distribution needs and is desired to be within 3 pounds. 3 to 5 pounds is the great range. When it is, what that means is that, well, everything is as balanced as it's supposed to be, and that means that it's easier for our body to communicate the way it's intended. And when we talk about the healing process, it means that our body is able to go through the healing process more easily because of that. Now, that's a great question to start out with, and Sherry, thank you so much for asking that question. Routinely, as we do reevaluations in our office, every 10 to 12 visits, we not only do that repeated posture check, but also that repeated weight balance to monitor the distribution, to monitor how the body is performing. And the wonderful thing is those external tests give us a great measure of how the body is functioning internally. And quite honestly, we really don't have to make that process any more complicated than that. So, the next question comes from Kristen. She asks in regards to kids in chiropractic. In fact, this is one in which oftentimes gets asked by, not only parents, but also grandparents. Because a lot of times the question is well, I recognize that my body is broken. And I heard that I'm supposed to be maintaining my body from birth on. The spine of ours is just like our teeth. It should be maintained immediately as soon as we have that opportunity. And in turn, when we start talking about kids in chiropractic, yes, your child should get checked immediately after delivery. So a lot of times that very first question that oftentimes arises is, well, why in the world would you ever check the newborn baby? Well, there's this thing that's called Google. You could actually use Siri. Just go ahead, pull up a birth video. Just watch it. Just one time. I'm going to tell you, you're only going to watch it one time, and if you were there, well, you're not going to want to have to watch it again, okay? Because here's the thing. You have somebody eye size, bigger, on the outside, taking a hold of that baby's head, turning it all the way to the right, all the way to the left, tilting it, and then tugging on it to deliver the shoulders. So a normal vaginal delivery delivers about 35 to 50 pounds of pressure into the baby's head and neck. Now, if you think about it, that newborn baby, well, when you picked it up, what did you do? You held the back of its head because it didn't have enough strength in order to actually maintain the composure of the weight of its own head. You had to help assist it. And yet you're going to have somebody on the outside grabbing a hold of this thing and tugging on it, applying 35 to 50 pounds of pressure. Unfortunately, that's oftentimes enough in order to create those very first subluxations. Now, the sad thing is that a normal vaginal delivery has 35 to 50 pounds of pressure involved with it. Well, when you start talking about assisted deliveries, forceps, C-sections, suction deliveries, all of a sudden, those extraordinary measures, those additional measures that are taking place, well, you're looking at 100 to 150 pounds of pressure. Would we ever imagine wanting to put that much pressure through a child's head and neck when we know that it can't even hold its own head up, which is a fraction of that weight? Unfortunately, subluxations don't care. They're just like cancers, they're just like cavities. Once they're there, they continue to affect the body. And in fact, let's recognize, there's no difference between that newborn and you and I. The only difference is, quite honestly, the maturity of our system. All the structures are pretty much there. All the function is exactly the same. And in turn, we realize when that subluxation occurs, the same bad things are going to happen to that child's body. It's going to operate at less than 100% of its capacity. And I would encourage you to go back and look at the old definition of health in Webster's dictionary, because it quantifies what health actually is. It's not a matter of just, us feeling good. It's not a matter, in fact, it's got nothing to do with us feeling good. It has everything to do with our body functioning at that optimal level, at that 100%. Even Darwin's Medical Dictionary recognizes that your state of health has nothing to do with how you feel, but everything to do with how your body is functioning. My youngest patient has been about 2 hours old. And like anything, knowing that we've done our part to ensure that that little body is subluxation free means that in the end, that child has that opportunity of growing up as healthily as they possibly can. Just like a tree. If you take a little sapling and you put a stone or a boulder up against it, well, we all know what happens in nature. That tree is going to bend around it. It's going to be bent to the side. And when we need those subluxations in a child's body, guess what? Their body isn't going to be functioning properly. Their body is going to adapt to that pressure. And in turn, it will be changed. And sadly, that's how oftentimes we see the brokenness that occurs in our adults. because it's been there from birth on. It's been there not for years, but for decades. And sadly, there is no turning back the hands of time. So to me, when do we get children checked? Immediately. Because we recognize the best form of health care is that prevention. Making sure that we're making those wiser, better choices and allowing the body to do what it was created and designed to do. Let's not forget, that child came from 2 cells that formed as one, and that one cell multiplied and divided until there were trillions of cells there operating in unison. That inborn intelligence knows exactly what to do, exactly how to function, and in turn, given the opportunity, that power that made you is able to run you and is certainly capable of healing you. So, this next question comes from Kathy. Do all chiros use the same technique? And which one do you use? So, this is one in which the answer is absolutely no. Not every chiropractor uses the same technique. Personally, I've been adjusted probably using about 15 to 20 different techniques. There are over 100 different adjusting techniques, and we are blessed because of it. And the reason why I say that we are blessed is because as chiropractors, we don't have to put you into some little box and say, hey, listen, this is the only way of solving your problem. Because the last time I checked, we're not all the same. Our injuries are not all the same. The tissues that are damaged are not all the same. Because of that, we're blessed from the standpoint that we have different techniques that we're able to pick and choose from to match up with not only the subluxations, but your personal condition and how it is we can best move you forward as quickly as possible and see that it is that best choice for you. For me, oftentimes, we use very special techniques here in the office. We do a lot of what's called corrective care work, which means that, not only are we working on removing these subluxations, but we're working on improving that posture, changing the spine, working on remodeling the system, and in turn, bringing it back to that higher level of function. Sort of like just by getting your teeth fixed, getting those braces on your teeth in order to bring them back to that form where, or in that position where they're able to function at their finest. The technique that we use is what's called CBP, Chiropractic Biophysics Technique. And it's oftentimes why when you walk into an office like ours, well, hey, listen, you're going to see some very special equipment here in order to help to remodel. Things like the adjusting tables that move in a bunch of different directions. The very specific type of tractioning devices and units in order to handle not just, remodeling of the neck, but also removing things like scoliosis, the bends in the spine where the spine doesn't grow straight. Tons of different ways of doing it. The wonderful thing, just like with the technique, we have options. Not everybody fits into that same model, and not what works for one person is going to work for absolutely everybody else. So for me, yes, I do love CBP. But we also use a variety of other techniques, pieces of them, whether we're talking about sacro-occipital technique, whether we're talking about Thompson or toggle technique. There are a bunch of techniques that we utilize depending upon the patient's condition. So I do love this question. In fact, to me, there really isn't a wrong technique when we look at removing the subluxation. The most important thing with that adjustment is the fact that we have removed the subluxation, we've removed the interference that keeps your innate intelligence from driving the health of your body to where it's supposed to be. So in turn, you know what? Above and beyond the technique of choice, It's the fact that we are getting checked and we're getting that subluxation removed. So, the next question, which I absolutely love, is change possible? The answer is yes. And I'm happy to say that. Absolutely yes. You know, a lot of times, this is a question that oftentimes comes up very quickly in our relationships, which is, can you help me? If in fact subluxation is present and it's at the root cause of why your body is functioning and why it's doing what it's doing, then the answer is yes. Chiropractic is that best choice. Can it be changed? The answer is yes. And in fact, it's really not a chiropractic answer. This is an answer of nature. It's an answer of science. Because here's the thing. Your body has demonstrated that from hello. You don't need me as a doctor and as a chiropractor to tell you that your body can change. Just the example of having, braces put on our teeth, we recognize that, well, we can see what happens to our teeth. It's a very simple formula. Time, frequency, and intensity. Those three things are capable of creating the stress and pressure over time in order to create the change very slowly but steadily in order to bring us back to that proper position. Now we recognize that in chiropractic, listen, we don't get to put braces on your body. That we know doesn't work. So in turn, as a chiropractor, we use a three-legged process, just like a three-legged stool. Utilizing your adjustments in order to create the habit to remove the stress and unlock those joints and push them back towards where they're supposed to be. The exercises in order to re-strengthen tissues that have been weakened over time because those subluxations have been present. And then the third thing is to work with the ligaments around the spine. Because the ligaments are that thing that actually shrink wraps around your spine, holding it in place. So we recognize that, in dealing with those three different factors, we get to actually create those same changes inside your spine. Now you're saying, well, doc, that's really nice. That's well and good. But how do I see that? Fantastic. Get a cut. Think about it. You get a cut. You don't have to tell your body, stop the bleeding. Oh, by the way, you want to clot that up. You also want to make sure that you're bringing that tissue together. In 2, 3, 4 weeks, as the body actually allows that to grow out, your inborn intelligence continues the healing process and the tissues push up and push up. Eventually, that scar goes away. See, the amazing thing is that our inborn intelligence, it knows how to heal. It's able to change. And whether I'm talking about the muscle and the tissue where your body goes through that same process, or a broken bone where Wolff's Law takes over. Where Wolff's Law causes the pressure on that bone to actually mend itself, to bring itself back together, to form that structure once again to be solid and complete. See, the amazing thing is that there's numerous demonstrations of the fact that our body is capable of being changed. Using the proper formula is going to allow us to do exactly that, create that change. So, one last question. Can you help with numb feet? I think this is a great question. It's asked by a newer patient in our office, somebody who's newer to chiropractic. So, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to this safety pin. I love my safety pins. This happens to be one of them that I keep back here in the report room. Can you help with numb feet? And she prefaced the statement with, I don't have diabetes. Like anything, let's understand, there's a lot of different causes. And there's a reason why the very first thing when people say, can you help? Well, it's to test the system. If you don't test the system, if you don't analyze what's going on, then you have no way of intelligently answering that question. Because like anything, we can say, hey, listen, we can help anything, but without seeing it, we really don't know the circumstances. And hence the reason why the very first thing that happens when you come in for a chiropractic evaluation at the Limerick Chiropractic Center, we're going to do those two very simple tests. We're going to do a posture check, and we're going to do that palpation. If, in fact, either one of those are not functioning the way they're supposed to, there is a high likelihood that subluxation may be at the root cause of why you're feeling the way you do. And if, in fact, it's enough of a concern, yes, then we're going to look inside, we're going to take x-rays in order to understand. Now, with that being said, if in fact there's a subluxation, and particularly at the lower part of your back, what ends up happening is just like you're going to see the safety pin, we recognize if there's any pressure, if there's any disconnect in that natural flow that's supposed to occur, well, guess what? The body's not going to function the way it's supposed to. And it doesn't matter whether the signal is going down to your feet or if your feet are sending the signal back and it's not getting back to where it's supposed to be. I mean, either way, sort of like a telephone line, if there's a disconnect in either leg, well, you're not going to be communicating very well, are you? Likewise, when we have this breakdown, when we have this opening here, that disconnect, what ends up happening is instead of our brain, the very top part here, sending the signal down to the body, and this would be your feet down here, and your feet sending a signal back up to your brain, well, this should be a continuous loop, just like you see in the safety pin. But when we have a subluxation and that disconnect, this disconnect doesn't allow information to travel through the way it's supposed to. And therefore, numbness, tingling, pain, burning sensation, the list just keeps going on and on. See, the numbness, the pain, the burning, the itching, any of those things are only signals that your body's giving you that there's an issue. You have to trace that back to the root cause of where is that coming from. And if in fact it's coming from subluxation, then guess what? The most appropriate thing is engaging in that correction and removing that subluxation so your body's capable of functioning the way it was created and designed to. I love the fact that as many times as we've reviewed that information on the safety pin, in fact, I would encourage you, go back to our workshop, from last week, and in order to review a little bit more about the safety pin, because this is a conversation that never gets old. It explains why things are happening. It explains how, in fact, the chiropractic adjustment is capable of helping with asthma and allergies and sinus infections, upset stomachs, along with headaches and migraines and low back pain. It explains all that. And here's the amazing thing. Not only is it easy for us to grasp and understand, but it's easy for us to explain to somebody else to help them learn more about why it is the right choice to make sure that we test our system and we go get checked. Now listen, I have a great time with these questions. I love these questions. In fact, we like to answer questions for you as our patients. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 very simple things. Make sure, number 1, you've liked this workshop. Number 2, I want you to go ahead in the comment section below, leave me a question. A question that you have, maybe about your own care, maybe about somebody that you know, a question that you want to have answered about health. And then finally, I want you to share this information. We all know somebody. We all know somebody who doesn't know as much as we know about chiropractic, or maybe has some of these same questions, or maybe wants to ask a question in order to get it answered on our next Ask the Doctor workshop. So I'm going to encourage you, like I said, like it, comment, and then share it. I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center.